Okay, so this would be a feedback slash critique for futurebeats44 regarding a Paul and Leo matchup. Gonna go through the usual spiel. I don't think I've given you feedback before, but you might have seen some of my other feedback stuff. I'm gonna go by Shazam on the Discords and stuff like that, or Captain Marvel. And I'm just a nerd who likes Tekken, right? I am by no means a professional player. I am by no means an expert at this game. However, all I'm saying is this. Based on my experiences playing Paul, fighting Paul, playing Tekken, watching Tekken, and just absorbing this godforsaken game for God knows how long, right? Here are my thoughts into areas you can improve on and my reasoning as to why, right? It is by no means gospel, right? At the end of the day, it's just my first impressions, and I'm just really hoping to provide some food for thought, like, hey, take this into consideration, right? Take what I say with a grain of salt, right? It is by no means kind of like a surefire method to victory, but it is something to consider, right? And I guess another thing is that I'm going to be throwing a lot of information at you, right? A lot of areas where I'm thinking like, hey, here's what you need to change up. Don't overload yourself by trying to tackle all of these areas at once, especially some of these areas regarding like defense and punishment take a long time to develop. And you need to just sort of prioritize and see, okay, what do I want to focus on the most and how do you prioritize that, right? Because if you try to do too many things at once, you try to juggle all these sort of like learning stuff in a very complicated game like Tekken, or any fighting game for that matter, you're just going to overload yourself, right? So this should be like an outline of like, hey, here's all these areas you can improve on, and it's up to you what you want to prioritize and how you want to go about doing that. Okay? With that being said, I don't think I'm forgetting anything. Let's get into it. Oh, good. Tekken bot's back. Okay, so like right off the bat, so this whole mix-up, the back 1-4 mix-up, I typically don't dive too much into like matchup knowledge in here. One, I don't really have that much matchup knowledge on a lot of characters, but two, it's also kind of like that's homework that I can tell you like little bits and pieces about the matchup stuff here and there, but it's something that you're gonna have to do your own homework on and lab out to a degree, right? Especially at this rank with characters like Leia, they just like throwing a bunch of shit at the wall and seeing what sticks. But this back 1-4 mix-up is nowhere near the menace that it used to be, right? And especially for Paul, right? This entire thing basically gets shut down by Paul forward 1+4, right? This is the stupidly evasive shoulder. Now, there is one thing the Leo can do, which is the very fast homing high option out of that stance, and that will catch forward 1+4. But 99% of the other options, right, either whiff or you hit Leo out of it. And that the important thing is you force. So normally in this situation, you're kind of in a fucked position. You just block something, you can't punish it, and the Leo can do whatever they want, and you kind of have to guess, right? There are options that you can challenge, but there are also options that will kill you for challenging Leo in this situation. Whereas with forward 1+4, you create a situation a bit more in your favor, whereas the Leo can do anything else from that stance, and it will get beat by forward 1+4, or they do the duckable homing high, right? Upon which, when you have a good read, you duck it and launch them for it, right? So you can really change this to be more in your favor, and that should be your goal, right? TLDR, anytime that the Leo does this move against you, press forward 1+4 until you condition them to use the high, right? And there's going to be times where the high will hit you out of it. I think it's even a counter hit launcher, right? But the goal is to try and restrict their sort of ability to, I'm just going to freely mix you up, right? You just let them know that they're able to, that they have to answer you, not the other way around. I'll talk about rage stuff later. In my opinion, right? What is the reason? Why would you do the rage drive there, right? What reason do you have granted this is the first match, what reason do you have for the Leo to be that would make it so that the Leo falls prey to that, right? Why would the Leo do this? Like, what is the reasoning behind, okay, I think the Leo is gonna duck here. Why? Do you do a lot of like range 0 demo man? It's possible, and that can put the fear of God into some people, right? But I feel like you're too trigger happy with the rage drive. Having rage is Paul's best resource, right? He has an entire mechanic designed to steal the round from an opponent just based on that alone. And you have to be very judicious with how you want to use it. Some people are too conservative and they'll die with rage, myself included, because they're just holding out for that really good launch, right? And in this situation where the health is kind of lower, it doesn't really matter if you get the RA cancel as much. Would it still be better? Yes, in a lot of situations that the RA cancel is most likely going to kill than just only the rage drive would. In a lot of situations, I want to say. But the main thing here is that in the open ground especially, just save it. Just don't use it. If you can push this Leo to the wall, where you can then use the frame advantage with the rage drive that comes with it, awesome. Okay, we're good. But in the neutral, where you're basically just throwing away your best option for free, right? You're just basically saying the Leo no longer has any reason to be scared of you, right? It's not... When Paul has rage, right, people instinctively are scared. They are afraid to press buttons. They're afraid to overextend because one down forward 2 and all of a sudden their life's just gone, right? Now that is the normal case scenario. In online, right, where everybody's a fucking monkey, that's less likely to happen. More people just don't really take into account. They just still throw out all of their overextending buttons, get clipped by down forward 2, and then die to a rage drive cancel, and then post about it on Twitter complaining about Paul, right? That's fine too, because it just means even if they're not respecting you, they're going to be pressing a lot of buttons and overextending, which Paul is great at punishing, right? I'll talk about the neutral situation a bit more later on, but for right now, we'll just continue with the match. And then right here is don't do this in the open ground, right? Is this, do you deserve to quit playing Tekken for doing this? No, right? The Leo clearly wasn't ready. They blocked it, and you got in for free. But there's three main issues here. Number one, this is a bad habit, right? Pressing forward 4 as your approach tool is going to get you killed. It's very linear, very slow, and opponents with sharper reactions will sidestep you. You'll sail harmlessly past them, stuck in long-ass whiff recovery animations, and they'll get to punish you for free. Will they always get this amazing punish? No. But the issue is you're giving the opponent an opportunity they would otherwise never have, right? You are giving your opponent free opportunities for damage by relying on that move as a means of approach. Are there situations where forward 4 is usable, right? Like on Oki and stuff, and you can even, if you hit it later, it'll even be plus on block. Yeah, that's totally possible. But it goes into the second issue of like, okay, you now blocked, and you've got the opponent up close and personal with Paul. Now what do you do, right? And the answer is not a whole lot. Paul just isn't designed to be up close and brawling with the best of the best. He's just not. A lot of his buttons that are fast or that you want to use for poking are very slow, and he doesn't keep up. That's just not his forte, right? Especially against a character like Leo with a plethora of mix-up options, a bunch of tools that they can use to just throw out and put you in a mix-up. In this situation, right? You don't want to just be, hey, I'm going to be at range 0 and then continue to press buttons. A lot of times Paul's going to lose that situation, and you're going to be relying on your defense. And if you're not knowledgeable in the matchup, or if your defense isn't that good, you're just basically opening yourself up for free, right? Yeah, and so that's why you got to avoid using forward 4, right? At least until you develop stronger habits in terms of how to approach the neutral and other options. Once those are more honed in, then go, yeah, sure. If you feel like, hey, this is a good situation, I'm going to use Trooper Roll right here, right now, more power to you. All I'm saying is, while you're still developing like your familiarity with Paul and stuff like that, just don't use Trooper Roll. It will be a really annoying habit to break later on as you face stronger opponents that know what they're doing against Paul and know that, like, oh, this guy likes to Trooper Roll. Time to just sidestep by a pixel and get an easy whiff punish. And I guess this dashing up Demo Man, you have to make sure your opponent has the fear of God to not press anything, or they're either stupid or they just have the fear of God and will not move away from you, right? Because notice that this Demo Man wasn't a full, like, you didn't trip on the hit. So instead, you're relying on the opponent to be bad and either rely on neutral guard or just not be guarding and eat the full string, which they do. Again, this goes back into that Trooper Roll issue of, ultimately in this situation it worked out and it's not the worst thing in the world. The issue isn't that. The issue is that you're building up a bad habit that's going to get you killed later on. Demo Man is an iconic tool of Paul's, yes, but it is a tool that carries a huge amount of risk when you're playing arguably one of the safest characters in this game, right? A lot of Paul is just, don't take any unnecessary risks, right? The high risk, high reward stuff outside of the wall does not matter. Any opponent just walking backwards by like a pixel and the clean hit whiffs, right? And are they going to perfectly punish you every single time? Because, I mean, some characters don't have decent punishes against Demo Man, right? And no, they're not going to perfectly punish you every single time. The issue is you're developing another bad habit that when you face stronger opponents that do punish you every time, you're going to hit a plateau very quickly where you have these string of bad habits that are really hard to break, and you're just unable to. You are actively impeding your progress down the line by over relying on these tools. Right. But yeah, so don't over rely on Trooper Roll, don't over rely on Demo Man, and you have to be very judicious with how you use those tools, otherwise you're developing bad habits that will get you killed later on. And it ends up working because Mr. Asswhoopin doesn't know that the block button or blocking exists in this game, but it is what it is. And man, at this point I would just tell you to do 3-2 over and over again. So this is another situation of don't use this string, right? Down 1 is a fantastic button. I love me some down 1. Down 1-4-2 is a joke. It's a fucking joke, right? It's a string that, again, it's not. None of it's like, it's like counter hit combo, I think, but none of it's guaranteed on natural hit, right? The opponent can eat the low but still block the mid, leaving you at -14. The opponent can just block low at any point, and then for well, assuming usually only the low's gonna hit, for what, like 10 points of damage. Down 1-4. 15 points of damage. Okay. For a load that's -17 on hit and 15 points of damage, right? You risk the opponent blocking low and then you die for it. Right? There's no really saving it. Down 1-4-2 is only a wall combo. And that's if it's like the worst possible situation and you have no other combo you can do, right? The faster you are at deleting that move from your repertoire, from your moveset, the better off you'll be. Right? The much easier time you'll have. Good attempt on the whiff punish. It didn't work out, but I like the idea. Death Fist is a really good whiff punisher. Just, do what you can with that. Unfortunately, it didn't work out. Nice. How are you able to punish that? When in doubt, just do it again. And so, okay, so you use a lot of back 1-2, and I'm not sure if it's because you're, excuse me, if you're trying to see if what the Leo is doing leaves them at -12, but just be careful with back 1-2. Again, it's a non-jailing high string, right? It's another string where if the opponent just ducks, like how you're ducking the throw attempt, they will launch you for it, and you will die, right? So it's another situation of, hey, here's what I think is a bad habit. Just be careful about it. Unfortunate. So when you duck a throw, you actually have a lot of opportunity to do things, right? Throws have a very long whiff recovery, and oftentimes you're able to launch the opponent. Now, online, factoring lag into account. Are you on Wi-Fi? Oh God, why would you do that to yourself? Whatever, man. Or maybe that's what. Maybe Mr. Asswhoopin's on Wi-Fi. God, why don't accept Wi-Fi? You're gonna have a bad time. But when you duck a throw attempt, your goal should be launching the opponent because they did something that leaves them with a very long whiff recovery period. So definitely practice that in the training room of just like, okay, create various scenarios where the opponent goes for a throw, you duck it, and then you practice your best punish, which is usually going to be a launch, right? It can be wall standing too, it can be hop kick, whatever. In situations where you're not sure, where you're like, fuck, I think I fucked up my timing, I don't think I have enough time to launch, even doing something like a wall standing 3-2 will still net you a good chunk of damage, right? So remember, just because if you did something like even just wall standing 3-2, the round would be over, right? But because you did wall standing 4, you're now giving the opponent an extra opportunity to attack. Again, not the worst thing in the world, but you're creating more work for yourself. Do what you can to avoid doing that. Right. Hey, way to go. It worked out. That was really annoying, huh? Rip. Rip. Yeah, we'll talk about that later. It's whatever. Rip. And the Leo's bad. So you see what I'm talking about, right? Like if the opponent's just scared because you did a low leading up to it, and now you did another low, and you did try to alter your timing a little bit, and it kind of worked. But you see what I'm saying, right? Like you dash in, the player will instinctively block low, and then you die, right? Demo Man is a lot stronger when the opponent's right in your face trying to rush you down, but they leave a gap in their pressure, and all of a sudden you just do Demo Man. It'll either counter hit them or trip them, whatever, and then you get to reset to neutral, and now the opponent has to work again to try and like approach you. So you just gotta be careful with stuff like that. Like you should have died, but the Leo's bad, so it is what it is. Reduce the usage of Demo Man unless you're at the wall or the opponent's really right up in your face and just leaving themselves at like -10 to 11, right? -9 or whatever, where they can't backdash it, they'll never sidestep Demo Man. The thing's homing basically, but it is a powerful tool when used effectively, but a lot of times it'll just end up failing you. And all I'm trying to say is be more judicious with it so you don't have it just blow up in your face. Nice. So I really like the cancels going on here. I think you got the rhythm down pretty well. We'll talk about this later, but just remember, you can cancel into other things, right? If the opponent is very passive, you know, I mean, and not even just the backsway options, right? But you can cancel into like forward 1+2. You can cancel into, I mean, I guess forward 1+2 is the only thing that you would, a move that you'd really want to cancel into. But you can, you know, sidestep cancel and try to bait like a whiff from the opponent and something for a punish. You know, there's a lot of options and opportunities you have. Experiment with the down forward 1 cancels a bit more. But so far, it seems like you got the execution for it, so that's good. Yeah, this layout really likes their throws. Unfortunate. You tried. Unfortunate. Oh my god. We'll go one more round. I feel like I've said a lot of what I wanted to say, and I want to do like my overall. We'll do one more round, and then I'll probably just give my thoughts and opinions after. Yeah. Rip. Pretty sure that's -12. Right. Oh, so right here, right? This little. So they do back 1-4, and this little like that what is it? That right arm slap or whatever that they just did. That's the move that counters forward 1+4, but that's a high that you can duck, right? So force the opponent to use that a bit more, make them second guess their own mix-ups, and then duck that and then launch them forward, right? Putting them in the blender. Make them constantly doubt their ability to just freely apply offense on you. I think that's the biggest issue we're seeing here, is that it's a combination of a lack of matchup knowledge and then defense awareness, kind of, and then the Leo is just able to smother you and just keep the Leo is able to smother you by just constantly pressing buttons, and that's just what's going to happen when you don't know what's going on in the matchup. And the solution is to study the matchup, right? Figuring out what the gaps are in their strings, figuring out what's punishable and what's not, which I'll go into in my little spiel at the end, but we'll keep going for now. That's not the worst thing. Rip. Nice. Okay, well, so I'm gonna do my usual spiel, neutral, punishment / matchup knowledge, combo / Oki, personal opinion stuff. Neutral. this is going to be my philosophy on Paul, and this is going to be a lot more defensive oriented. I don't think Paul is a very aggressive character. I don't think he's optimally played that way, right? Can people play a very aggressive Paul? They can, right? More power to them. Tekken's very flexible with how you play characters, and very few characters really fall into this defined category of archetype or something. The problem in doing so is that, one, you're playing kind of like a subpar character if you just want to go full on aggro, but it also requires a lot of, matchup knowledge to know when to try and pressure the opponent and when to kind of hang back. It requires a lot of just ability to read what your opponent is going to do and tailor your offense accordingly, right? It's just not a playstyle I'm a fan of. I think you're doing yourself a disservice. So, with that being said, I'm just going to go into my opinions on neutral with Paul. Paul is best served by playing at a slightly farther away from range 0 range, right? At a range where he can safely whiff down forward 2, he can press core circle back 4 as much as he wants, he can press core circle back 2 as much as he wants without much fear of retaliation from the opponent, right? He is always best served when the opponent is second-guessing their approach and the pace of the match is a lot more heavily slowed down, so you can focus a bit more on poking, focus a bit more on reading your opponent and gaining as much information as you can, etc., 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 right? However, the first thing is, how do you achieve that, right? How do you achieve that type of situation when the opponent is just smothering you with a bunch of buttons and they're never really giving you that sort of breathing room that you might want in order to start applying your mix-ups and stuff? And that goes into the first thing of, to slow down the pace of the match, you have to punish your opponent. The hypothetical scenario is that your opponent is doing a bunch of unsafe shit. You keep punishing them so they stop doing the unsafe shit and start, start taking more time to try and formulate their offense. And during that time, right, when they're second guessing themselves, they're not pressing buttons because you keep punishing them. That's when you can try and apply I think you're scared to press a button, I'm gonna press core circle back 4, and if they fuck up their timing, you get a counter hit launch, right? And you can just keep pressing all of your plethora of safe tools that are above the curve and just completely broken, right? And the opponent just has to deal with it. Now, however, you are clearly dealing with an opponent that's never going to give you that opportunity, right? They're just going to keep pressing buttons. They've never met a button they didn't like to press, and they're just going to keep doing that. And that is perfectly okay, right? You are playing a character with one of the best punishment suites in the game. Paul has a frame every frame that you would want to have a punish. Paul has a serviceable, if not above average, punish, right? 10 frame is awkward. It's not great. Sure, it's just a 1-2. It's nothing special. 12 frame, back 1-2 is still one of the best 12 frame punishers in the game, right? The move has stupid range, the move has high damage, and it's a very plus on hit, enabling mix-ups. Granted, there's a lot of pushback in the ballerina spin, so you're limited, right? But that's fine, because you're just never going to have to worry about, they did a -12 move, and I'm not sure if I'll reach. You'll reach with back 1-2, right? Paul gets a 14 frame launcher, right? Now, granted, the range is obviously shite, but in situations where people just have to go back to their 12 frame punish or their 13 frame punish, Paul can launch, right? We're not even just talking about a knockdown, right? Plenty of characters have their own 14 frame knockdown punish, sure, and that's really nice. But Paul gets just a straight up launcher, right? And then at 13 frame crouching, Paul gets while standing 3-2, when a lot of characters would kill to have a 13 frame punish for crouching. And it goes back to the situation of, okay, my opponent is clearly not going to let me have my breathing room and slow down the pace. But that's where your matchup knowledge comes in. Is after you study the Leo matchup, you don't care, right? It's either Option A, the opponent stops being a monkey for 1 second and starts slowing down, so then you can start applying your slower buttons. Or option B, the opponent keeps being a monkey and you just keep racking up free damage, right? There are very rare situations where the Leo will do something unsafe and Paul cannot punish it. And if the Leo keeps pressing buttons, you're going to keep getting opportunities to freely punish the Leo where you wouldn't otherwise, right? So in either situation, you are perfectly fine. But the goal is, one, boost up your defensive knowledge and focus more on trying to punish the opponent instead of applying your offense. Paul just isn't going to be effective in that area as other characters are, right? He's better served by figuring out, what is my opponent doing that's punishable? I'm just going to keep punishing that until they stop doing that. And once they stop doing that, you move on to the next thing, right? And you move on to the next thing. And you keep punishing the opponent on every aspect that you can until finally that they just start to second guess themselves. Or, right, they keep doing all the unsafe shit, you keep punishing them, and then they just die, right? Because they refuse to adapt. And that's going to be the critical thing going up, is that, yeah, you have a good comfort with Paul, but how good is your punishment game, right? How good is your defense? And that's really what you got to be focusing on, is less trying to rely on these panic options and just pressing strings into stuff, and just start studying, like, okay, what is this Leo doing? Look up a Leo punish guide. There's a dime a dozen of them on YouTube. I'm a big fan of Mr. Pencil's punish guides. He goes over a lot of the character's move list, detailing frame data, options, punishment, etc., right? And just start learning up this matchup, start punishing your opponent, and either punish them till they're dead, or when they slow down, you can start applying your own pressure, right? I talked about other aspects of neutral, about buttons I don't think you should be pressing. I would talk about dash blocking, but here the situation is that you're just going to face a lot of aggressive people. You don't have to worry about approach as much. But if you're worried about the approach, you're like, how do I approach my opponent, when you don't need to because they're just throwing themselves at you? Dash blocking. Dash blocking is your friend. Paul has some options to approach, but they're just memes. His down forward one's slow and sluggish, and the hitbox is kind of ass. It's whatever, right? A lot of Paul is going to be dash blocking to bait something out of the opponent, and then it's just movement. It's a lot of movement, right? Punishment / matchup knowledge. I talked about it before. You just got to lab it. Just got to figure out, like, all right, what is this Leo doing that's punishable? What can I do against it, right? And then just more matchup experience about what can you interrupt and what do you have to punish. What can you punish and what do you have to interrupt? Other aspects, I talked about the forward 1+4 against Leo back on 4. Experiment with it, right? Just be ready to, like, punish that high when they go for it. Other things to consider for punishment / matchup knowledge. Maybe in personal opinion stuff. So we'll just leave that as is. Combos / Oki. I thought your combos were solid. You know, there's not much combo game to Paul. That, you know, let me rephrase that. There is a combo game to Paul, but it's optional, right? I'm of the opinion you just do the simple, super hard to drop stuff, and you just keep it simple, and then your success with Paul isn't necessarily going to come from, like, these crazy ass combos. It's going to come from your fundamentals, right? How strong is your defense? How strong are you and able to create opportunities without relying on moves so much? He has moves you can spam as much as you want, but you have to get there first, right? Combo / OQ is pretty good. Personal opinion stuff. Options that I think are nice, but your mileage may vary, right? A lot more just doing 1-2 and jabs, right? Jabs are your friend. They're very fast, disruptive option that enables you to really punish your opponent expose your opponent's gaps and their pressure, right? And then you can quickly use that frame advantage for a throw mix-up, for a low, to backdash, etc., 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 right? A lot of opportunities better served with jabs, or just doing a 1 jab, right? Just do a 1 jab, and then that way you don't overcommit. Yeah, 1-2 jails, but in case you don't get the first jab blocked and you don't want to risk it, just do 1 jab, right? Just a lot of, like, less is more, right? Paul has a core set of effective tools, and you just want to focus on abusing them. Instead of Death Fist, use Core Silker back 2. Instead of Demo Man, use a lot more Sidestep 3 and back 4, right? And Core Circle forward 3, right? Tools that enable you to do something without so much risk to yourself. Yeah, something like Core Circle forward 3 is very punishable on block, sure. Minus 14, right? But it comes from stupid far away, it's really hard to see, and there's already a mix-up with just the roll dash, right? People can look at it, and it can be either Demo Man, it can either, or not Demo Man, it can be Demo Man if you want it, right? But basically, you have a lot of options. It's going to be very hard for the opponent to guess your timing on Core Circle forward 3, and you basically just get to keep racking up easy chip damage, right? The move's broken. Other things to consider: Paul's throw game. Paul is a pretty strong throw game. It's just one of those things where you have to constantly make your opponent aware of it, right? And the more you do, the more you're able to mentally tax your opponent and force a mistake out of them, the more opportunities you're going to get. Other personal opinion stuff. Off the top of my head, I honestly, nothing's coming to mind right now, so I'll just call it a day right now. I've said my fair share on stuff where I'm kind of just, the TLDW on all this is literally just try to compact your gameplay a bit more. Stop over relying on these big risky call out moves that are gonna get you killed because they're gonna become bad habits later on, right? And yeah, that's about it for now. If you have any more questions, let me know. If you'd like a follow-up on the later matches, let me know. Obviously, I'm only doing the first few because I'm seeing a lot of similar patterns, and I'm just voicing my concerns about, hey, I think you should work on these first. But if you want to see the rest of the matches, if you want feedback on them, is there a different character that comes out? Oh, I guess you fight an Armor King later. I mean, you still fight the Leo for a good minute. Oh, no, the Armor King is where the video ends. Yeah, okay. Yeah, man, if you have any questions, let me know. Hope this helped, and have a good one.